Hey there! In this video, we'll talk about modularity in the ABP framework. As you might have guessed, the ABP framework was designed to support building fully modular applications and systems where every module may have entities, services, database integration, APIs, UI components, and so on. The ABP framework is a completely modular framework, and if you create a new solution with the ABP framework right now, and go to the module class of any layer, you'll be able to see all the modules that this layer is depending on. And now this means that each layer is responsible for its own and reference dependencies. And this modularity makes it easy for you to customize your application and change each of them on its own without affecting the others. Now let's create a new module with the ABP framework. Let's use the ABP CLI to create an application module. We'll call it Issue Management, for example. And I'm going to use the T option for template, and I'm going to pick module. And this is how the module template looks. We've got three folders: the source folder, the host folder, and the test folder. The source folder contains the actual module and what you're going to do with the module, and is based on the domain-driven design principles. The test folder, of course, contains unit and integration tests, and the host folder contains some applications with different configurations to demonstrate how to host the module in an application. Now, they're not part of the module, but useful on development. And this diagram shows the layers and the project dependencies of the module template. As you can see, if we check any of them, we're going to find the dependencies right here. Each layer is depending on the modules that it needs. Let's check right here, for example. And we can see right here as well. Now these are the same domain-driven design principles that we've already explained in a previous video, which was the application startup template video. And you can watch that video for a brief introduction about these layers. And every module must declare a class derived from the ABP module. Let's take a look at this, for example. You see ABP module. Now let's suppose we've worked something with it and we wanted to test our module. We're going to use the web.unified project to test that. Since we have a UI, this project will host both the UI and the API on a single point. As you can see, all the dependency injection of all the used modules are right here. We can even take a look at them again and see each module that this project depends on. Now, as an ASP.NET Core developer, you probably know that we've got two crucial parts in the startup class: the service registrations and options configurations, and also the request pipeline, or the middleware. And the ABP framework splits these two parts in a more extensible manner, so to speak, with the service registrations and the options configurations being in the configure services method, and the middleware in the on-application initialization method. And both of these methods got synchronous and asynchronous versions as well. So we can make this one async, make this one task, and add the async right here as well. Now we've got the async version. And same thing with this method. And we've also got pre and post versions of both methods, and that's to override and write your code right before and after the configure services or the on-application initialization method. So we can say public override pre-configure services, and we can also say public override void. And we've got them right here. We've got the post application initialization and also the pre application initialization right here. And we've also got on application shutdown if we wanted to execute some code while the application is being shut down. Now, before we show how to run it, let's try plugging in a module. It is possible to load modules as plugins, which means that you may not reference a module's assembly in your solution, but you can load that module in the application startup just like any other module. Let's try this. First, I'm going to add a folder right here and I'm going to call it plugins. Then I'm going to create a new project right here. It's going to be a class library. And let's call it my plugin. I'm also going to create the folder right here. Let's keep it on .NET 7. And we've got our class right here. And then I'm gonna right-click right here, and I'm gonna go to Manage NuGet Packages. And I'm gonna find volo.abp.core right here. And I'm gonna install it. Then I'm gonna rename this. I'm gonna call it my plugin. And of course, it's gonna inherit from ABP module, as we do with all the modules. As we always say, every module must declare a class derived from the ABP module. Now I'm gonna copy something right from the documentation, and it's gonna be what this class has. We've got a small service that we haven't created yet. It's going to be called My Service. And once we run the project and it's on application initialization, we're going to be using a method coming from this service. Let's create this service real quick. Let me also rename this My Plugin. So I'm going to create a new class right here. And I'm going to call it My Service, whatever it was. It'll inherit from iTransient dependency, and I'm gonna copy the rest from the documentation. I'll paste it right here. We're just gonna use the logger interface to add this small message in this method. And this method is gonna be called right here. And what's this? Oh, sure. Yeah. Next up, we're gonna build the project. We'll find it right here. We're going to go to bin, debug, .NET 7, and we're going to copy the DLL file. Then we'll go to the C disk and then the temp folder, or any folder that you want, doesn't really matter. My plugins. And we're going to paste the DLL file right here. And since this is related to the API, we're going to head to the HTTP API host project, and we're going to find the program class. And I'm going to find the add application async method right here, and I'm going to put my options right here. And I'm taking this right from the documentation. So I'm just going to put options dot plugin sources dot add folder. And I'll paste in the directory of my plugins folder. I'll just paste it in right here. And by this, we can update the database from the package manager console. And we're just going to run update database. All right, let's take a look. We can run it first, actually. And this is the UI of our module. Let us also test our plugin module. Just ran the API, and while it loads, I can find it right here. I can find the logs, and we can search this sentence. And it's right here. This is our plugin module. So on application initialization, this string was sent. And here is our API. And next up is the benefits of modularity. We've got a few scenarios right here to demonstrate how sweet modularity can be. And the first scenario is the monolithic application. Now, the application startup template that we've covered in a previous video can be a very good example about monolithic scenarios. It's mostly got everything you need, the UI, the business logic, the API. All you have to do is just import the module library. And the second scenario is the microservice, which can be used as an API. It'll have our business logic, it is separated, and you do not have to add a UI. However, you can add a UI to it, the same way that the application module that we've created in this video has its UI, and it can be a very good example about the microservice scenario. And the third scenario is the client app that serves the API, which also includes the UI, but it does not have business logic. Now, the web host project can be a very good example about the client application that serves the API, but before we run it, let's run the auth server first because it's going to need the login feature. You got it right here. Then let's run our web host project. As you can see right here, it's got the UI, And it's also got the API onto Swagger. As we said, it's got the UI and it serves the API as well. And the fourth scenario is the client app, like for example the Angular client app or whatever client app, which only includes the UI and no infrastructure at all. And that's why we generate proxies to communicate with the API. And the last scenario that I would call the gateway, which is a pure API that does not have anything at all. Now the sweet thing about these is each of these can run on its own independently, which makes it easier and more flexible to customize your application and change each of them on its own without affecting the others. Let's take another example to see how they can run independently. I've also got Redis running on Docker right here, so I can run 3 projects at the same time. I'm going to go to the properties of the solution, and I'm going to pick multiple startup projects. And I've picked the auth server project, the HTTP API host, and the web host. So I'm going to click OK, and let's start them. And here is our identity project right here, and here is our HTTP API host, and here is our web host, which also has access to the API. And each of these is running independently. This is how sweet modularity can be. And that's modularity for you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.